Could this be merely a natural artistic evolution, or a quiet emotional distance that is slowly but surely changing everything, even leaving Jungkook himself stunned, unable to believe it, as he realizes Taehyung has truly sunk deep into his solo world? That question is now echoing in many minds, not only among fans, but also cultural observers, professional photographers, visual art academics, and even those who once believed the dynamic between Jungkook and Taehyung was almost unshakable. What is really happening? Why does this change feel so powerful, so different, and so unsettling? At first, everything seemed normal. A global idol exploring his personal identity, an artist searching for a new bodily language. But the longer it is observed, the harder it becomes to ignore the small details that somehow speak the loudest. Taehyung's gaze, now more inward-focused. His body poses, no longer merely aesthetic, but filled with meaning, full of bodily awareness, confidence, and a deliberate command of lines, space, and visual tension. And on the other side, Jungkook's reaction. Not anger, not open rejection, but a quiet shock, as if he has only just realized that something has shifted far faster than he ever expected. Those who closely follow Taehyung's recent developments keep repeating the same observation, with a tone that mixes admiration and caution. The poses he presents today are no longer typical idol poses. There is a mature bodily awareness, an almost academic confidence, and a striking ability to create strong lines that make every image feel alive, even in stillness. One visual observer described it in terms usually reserved for contemporary art analysis, not K-pop imagery. These poses add visual tension, make images more memorable, and allow emotion or narrative to come through the body, they explained, as if dissecting a gallery installation rather than a photo shoot by a global idol. So where does Jungkook stand in all of this? Why is his name inevitably drawn into a narrative that should, at least on the surface, be about Taehyung's solo achievement? The answer may lie not in what is said, but in what remains unspoken. Jungkook is known as expressive, but also deeply intuitive. He reads change not through headlines, but through energy, through the way someone stands, the pause before a smile, the intensity that suddenly feels unfamiliar. And as Taehyung fully immerses himself in his solo world, a world built on complex visual language and total control, Jungkook seems to realize something deeply surprising. This is not a passing phase. This is a shift in direction for many fans. Taehyung's solo projects have felt different from the very beginning. There is no sense of half measures, no visible compromise. Every concept, every camera angle, every bodily position appears to be planned with near scientific precision. Taehyung's body no longer merely follows music or a photographer's direction. It becomes the very core of the visual structure. There are strong diagonal lines, intentional curves, and a tension between stillness and movement that makes the eye linger. This is not coincidence. This is language, and it is precisely this language that leaves some people mesmerized, while making others feel left behind. Jungkook, according to those who closely observe their dynamic, seems to stand right at that emotional crossroads. He admires it, he respects it, yet he is also shaken, as if Taehyung has stepped far ahead, into a territory so personal and self-contained that it becomes difficult to reach, even for those who were once closest. Does this mean their relationship is changing? Or is this simply what emotional maturity looks like when it finally takes form? In the world of visual art, there is a concept known as embodied narrative, where the body itself becomes the primary medium of storytelling. Taehyung appears to have fully entered this space. The poses he chooses create visual tension not through exaggeration, but through control. Each bodily line guides the viewer's gaze, builds emotion, and leaves an impression that lingers long after the image is gone. This is what makes his images so memorable, not because of fame, but because the body speaks. Yet for Jungkook, who has long shared stages, processes, and emotional spaces with Taehyung, this transformation may feel like watching someone switch languages mid-conversation. Not a foreign language, but one that is suddenly deeper, more personal, and harder to follow without distance. This is where emotion quietly settles in. Not explosive emotion, but something heavier, something that sinks. Jungkook's disbelief is not rooted in doubt of Taehyung's ability, but in the realization of how seriously Taehyung is committing to this path. To be immersed does not mean to disappear, but to be fully absorbed, focused without residue, devoted in a way that feels almost silent, yet undeniably heavy. Many are now asking the same question: is this the beginning of a major shift in their dynamic? Has this solo journey unintentionally created an unavoidable distance? Or is it, instead, an emotional test that will redefine what togetherness truly means? What is clear is that what Taehyung is doing now cannot be dismissed as an ordinary solo project. There is an academic layer to his visual approach, a deep understanding of how the body constructs narrative. These poses are not only beautiful, they are structured. The strong lines he creates generate visual tension, make images linger in memory, and allow emotion to flow without words. This is art that demands full attention, and in the middle of it all, Jungkook stands as the most honest witness. Not as a rival, not as an obstacle, but as someone who sees the change from the closest possible distance. His disbelief is not resistance, but a reflection of how profound and decisive this transformation truly is. Will the public understand this nuance? Or will it be simplified into conflict, distance, or drama? Those questions continue to circulate with every new image released, every pose analyzed, and every expression of Jungkook scrutinized. There is no official statement that explains everything, no lengthy clarification that closes the gap of curiosity. There are only small clues, scattered through body language, visual intensity, and a silence that feels increasingly meaningful. Perhaps this is what makes the story so emotional. Not because there is open confrontation, but because the change is too real to ignore. Taehyung moves forward, fully immersed in his solo world, armed with extraordinary bodily awareness and confidence. Jungkook watches, shocked, admiring, and perhaps, just perhaps, feeling the emotional ground beneath him subtly shift. Is this the end of something familiar, or the beginning of something far more mature and complex? No one can answer with certainty. But one thing is clear: when the body becomes narrative, when pose becomes language, and when self-awareness reaches its most intense point, change is no longer a possibility. It has already happened. And that is where we stand now, caught between admiration and unanswered questions, watching Taehyung build a world entirely his own, while Jungkook and all of us try to understand what it all truly means. The silence surrounding this transformation may be the loudest signal of all. In an industry where explanations are often rushed, clarified, and carefully packaged, the absence of definitive words feels intentional, almost strategic. Taehyung does not rush to explain what his solo world means, nor does Jungkook attempt to frame his reaction for public comfort. Instead, everything unfolds through implication, through posture, through timing, through the emotional residue left behind after each appearance. This is not a story being told directly. It is one being felt. As Taehyung continues to move deeper into his solo identity, the discipline behind his visual choices becomes increasingly evident. His body is no longer positioned to simply be seen. It is positioned to communicate. There is restraint where excess would be expected, tension where softness once dominated, and intention in moments that might otherwise appear effortless. This level of control suggests not only confidence, but ownership of space, of image, of narrative. In academic visual theory, such control is often associated with artists who have reached a stage of self-definition where external validation becomes secondary to internal coherence. For Jungkook, witnessing this shift may feel like standing beside someone who has quietly crossed a threshold. Not abruptly, not dramatically, but decisively. There is a particular kind of shock that comes not from conflict, but from realization, the moment one understands that a shared rhythm has subtly changed tempo. Jungkook's disbelief seems to live in that space. It is the disbelief of recognition, not denial. Recognition that Taehyung is no longer experimenting. He is declaring. Observers who frame this moment as tension or rivalry may be missing its deeper emotional texture. What appears unsettling is not competition, but asymmetry. Taehyung's immersion is total, his focus unwavering. Jungkook's position, meanwhile, feels transitional, not lost, but reflective. There is a pause in his energy that suggests processing rather than resistance. In human terms, it is the pause that comes when someone you know well reveals a side of themselves that has been quietly forming all along. The emotional resonance of this moment lies in its subtlety. There is no dramatic rupture, no visible fracture. Instead, there is a recalibration. Taehyung's body language speaks with increasing clarity, while Jungkook's expressions hint at internal adjustment. This contrast creates a narrative tension far more compelling than overt drama. It invites interpretation, introspection, and empathy. In this sense, the public's fascination is understandable. We are not witnessing conflict. We are witnessing transformation in real time. Transformation that does not ask for permission, does not slow down to reassure, and does not soften itself for easy consumption. Taehyung's solo world is unapologetically complete, and that completeness is precisely what makes it powerful and disorienting. As images continue to circulate and interpretations multiply, one truth becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. This moment is not about separation, but about individuation. About what happens when an artist steps fully into their own gravity. Jungkook's disbelief, then, becomes part of the story itself. It humanizes the transition. It reminds us that even the strongest bonds must sometimes stretch to accommodate growth. Whether this evolution will ultimately redefine their dynamic or deepen it in unexpected ways remains unknown. But what is certain is that something irreversible has begun. Not a loss, but a shift. Not an ending, but a reorientation, and perhaps that is the most unsettling and most beautiful aspect of all. Change has arrived without noise, without confrontation, without a clear explanation. It has arrived through posture, through presence, through the quiet confidence of a body that knows exactly where it stands. Taehyung has stepped fully into himself, and Jungkook, like the rest of us, is learning how to see him there. Time, as it always does, begins to reveal the deeper layers of this shift. What initially felt like a sudden immersion now reads more like a long, deliberate journey finally reaching visibility. Taehyung did not arrive at this point overnight. The precision of his movements, the authority of his poses, and the emotional economy in his expressions suggest years of internal refinement. What the public is witnessing now is not experimentation, but the unveiling of something that has been patiently forming beneath the surface. This realization reframes Jungkook's reaction in a new light. Disbelief, in this context, is not surprise at the change itself, but at the timing of its emergence. It is the moment of recognizing that someone you know has been walking a parallel path all along, quietly preparing for a moment you were not fully expecting. There is humility in that realization, and also vulnerability. It asks the witness to adjust their understanding, to let go of an older image in order to make space for a more complex one. The emotional undertone becomes even more apparent when considering how Taehyung's solo world resists simplification. It does not rely on overt storytelling or dramatic symbolism. Instead, it trusts the intelligence of the viewer. His body becomes a site of meaning, carrying emotion through tension, stillness, and alignment. In academic discourse, this is often associated with mature artistic practice, where less is shown but more is felt. The absence of excess invites attention rather than demanding it. Jungkook's position within this unfolding narrative remains quietly compelling. He is neither distant nor intrusive. His presence is felt through subtle cues, a lingering look, a thoughtful pause, a shift in demeanor. These moments suggest an internal dialogue rather than an external conflict. They speak to the complexity of witnessing someone else's self-actualization while navigating one's own evolving identity. What makes this moment resonate so strongly is its relatability. Beyond the scale of global fame, the core emotion is universal. Many people recognize the experience of watching someone close to them change. not in ways that break bonds, but in ways that reshape them. Growth, after all, rarely happens in isolation. It ripples outward, touching those who stand nearby, asking them to grow as well. As conversations continue across fan communities and cultural spaces, interpretations will inevitably diverge. Some will search for hidden tensions, others for confirmation of enduring unity. Yet perhaps the most honest reading lies somewhere in between. This is not a story of departure, but of differentiation. Not a loss of connection, but a recalibration of it. Taehyung's immersion in his solo world does not erase what came before. It builds upon it. The confidence visible in his body language is inseparable from the years of shared experience that shaped him. In that sense, Jungkook is not watching from the outside, but from a place deeply embedded in the history of that evolution. As the narrative continues to unfold, one thing becomes increasingly clear. This chapter is not meant to be rushed or resolved quickly. It asks for patience, for attentiveness, and for a willingness to sit with ambiguity. The lack of clear answers is not a failure of communication, but an invitation to deeper understanding. In the end, what remains is not shock, nor distance, but a quiet recognition of growth in its most honest form. Taehyung stands firmly within his own artistic gravity, fully aware of the lines his body draws and the emotions it carries. Jungkook, in turn, stands at a point of reflection, witnessing not the loss of a shared past, but the emergence of a more layered future. As this evolution continues to unfold, the atmosphere surrounding both of them grows increasingly contemplative. There is a sense that the narrative has shifted from something external and observable into something more internal and psychological. Taehyung's solo immersion is no longer just about visuals, poses, or artistic choices. It has become a statement of self-definition. Every appearance reinforces the idea that he is no longer negotiating his identity with expectation, but presenting it as a finished thought. That kind of certainty can be powerful, but it can also feel disorienting to those who remember the earlier, more fluid versions of him. For Jungkook, this moment seems to invite introspection rather than reaction. His disbelief carries a quiet gravity, the kind that comes from realizing that a familiar dynamic has reached a natural limit and must now transform. It is not grief, but it is not comfort either. It exists in a space where admiration and uncertainty coexist. This emotional duality is what gives the situation its depth, making it resonate far beyond surface-level interpretation. The public, meanwhile, stands at a distance, attempting to read meaning into fragments. A glance captured by a camera, a pause that lingers just a second too long, a shift in energy that feels subtle, yet undeniable. These fragments become symbols, not because they are dramatic, but because they are restrained. In restraint, people often sense truth. And in this restraint, many perceive a story about growth that refuses to be neatly packaged. Taehyung's command of his physical presence continues to play a central role in this perception. His awareness of line, balance, and tension suggests an artist who understands the body not merely as a vessel, but as a language in itself. The emotional clarity in his poses does not demand explanation, it assumes comprehension. This confidence implies a readiness to be seen as he is, without mediation. It is a bold position, especially in a space where interpretation is often controlled.